We need to acknowledge that in the last 5 to 6 years, the concerns are shifting from shorter term to longer term. Will I be able to buy a house as a young family? Will I be able to raise a child? Will I be able to get my education and achieve longer term career goals? I remember that in 2020, 2021, the concern was, how can I survive now? How can I keep my family safe and live through these tumultuous times? And now, with geopolitical events, inflation, although inflation subsided, but tariff situation, the concern is shifting to longer-term concern. And that's what we see right now, that those concerns are shifting.
Welcome to the Curiosity Current, the podcast where we dive deep into what's shaping today's trends and tomorrow's consumers. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm so glad you're joining me. Each episode, we tap into the minds of researchers, innovators, and insights professionals to explore how curiosity drives discovery and how discovery drives better decisions in an ever-changing market landscape. Whether you're a data enthusiast, a strategy pro, or like me, just endlessly fascinated by human behavior, this is the place for you. So get ready to challenge your assumptions, spark some fresh thinking, and have some fun along the way. Let's see where curiosity takes us next with this brand new episode. Welcome back to the Curiosity Current. Today on the hosting side, I am joined by AYTM's Chief Revenue Officer, Glenn Fleischman. I'm so excited to have you hosting with me today, Glenn.
Thanks for having me.
And today's guest is Michael Nevski, Director of Global Insights at Visa, where he leads thought leadership that informs the company's global economic forecast and strategic planning. Michael has spent his career at the intersection of data, emerging technology, and human behavior, turning insights into strategies that drive revenue growth and enhance the consumer experience. Michael has also had leadership roles at Charles Schwab, IRI, and Danaher Corporation, designing campaigns and research programs that have consistently generated measurable business impact. More recently, Michael has been exploring the evolving gig economy, agentic AI, and the ways affluent and digitally savvy consumers are shaping the future of payments and financial services. In today's episode, we'll dive into how AI is transforming consumer behavior, what the rise of the gig economy means for brands and payments, and how strategists, marketers, and insights professionals can harness data, creativity, and tech to anticipate trends and drive growth. Michael, we are genuinely excited to have you join us today.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's an honor to be here. I'm very excited to have a conversation today and be on your show. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Well, we want to just rip the Band-Aid off and jump right in. And just to kind of go back to the intro that I just did, you have built this truly fascinating, high-impact career at the nexus of consumer insights and emerging technologies and data-driven strategy. Looking back, how did your career journey evolve in this way to focus on the intersection of all of these things? Like, can you take us through how you got here in your career?
Absolutely. I guess the short answer, natural curiosity. For the researcher and marketer, you always need to have that. But I started my career in marketing and rose through the ranks and was a VP of marketing for a DVD distribution company early in my career. And I love the strategy. I love the consulting piece. But through my career, I always was interested in, like, we call it semantics or details, why people do what they do. And at a certain stage, when I was with Danaher Corporation and handling water quality division in terms of the direct marketing and supporting the medical devices and dental devices divisions, I was trained in conducting a voice of the customer, a VOC. And that's what really triggered my interest, because I realized that insights, research, us, and we all represent the research industry, we truly identify the white spaces for our businesses and our clients and consumers, and are helping with the direction to where corporations and services and products needs to move. But not only that, we're helping them to connect the dots and get from point A to point B to point C. And I love this analogy. We are the neck, and marketing and the rest of the companies had. So we turned the hat to the right direction and point them, go there, go here. And that's how I started transitioning from marketing to marketing research. That was the first stage. And the second one, I got lucky in my career because look, I worked in the manufacturing like Danaher. And then I went to CPG world, syndicated data, handled the global consumer panel for ARI, nowadays Circana. Was in charge of delivering products and services to all the major retailers in the United States and beyond, CPG clients, what we call the annual restatements, where you pretty much update the platform and delivering services. And then I went to Charles Schwab, where I led marketing research for wealth management. And now I am in payments. Many people might say I'm just lucky, probably, but it was always focused on that natural curiosity, learn beyond what is needed to do your job. And even at my current role, I try to learn about new products and services and why we do what we do in terms of the business. So it's kind of a understanding and always looking above and beyond, not because I'm an overachiever, but it's just a curiosity. Again, learning something you don't know. Sometimes I even look up this new product we're rolling out or doing something. I try to understand the definitions and how it works and what is it for. So, and that's how I kind of start moving that direction. And the last piece, always focus on, like you guys, full disclosure, as you know, we have a working relationship with you guys, and I know my corporate team is enjoying the relationship, and you help us, and I use the fruits of your labor, guys, myself internally by partnering with my business partners. My little commercial, right? So, but yes, it's like when you read those articles by analysts and say, full disclosure, we have those stocks and we have those stocks that only represents the same thing. So for our audience, yes, we have that relationship. But same time, like I said, focusing on the trends, right? So, like what you guys help us sometimes to identify. Yes, some people can say it DIY, some people can say it quick and dirty, but really you can conduct that quick research to really understand once you see the new trend. And you mentioned like gig economy or rise of a single person household, generative AI in terms of the shopping and retail. And now we're talking about agentic AI, which is a big, very big topic for my company, both of them actually, right? So, but again, focusing on those trends or identifying what else, predict what else is going on. Like to give an example, even right now, last week, we heard lots of talk by big CEO, large company CEOs saying that maybe generative AI was a little bit over exaggerated, right? Maybe we need a pullback in terms of the investment in the generative AI. And right away, why it comes on for me, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for my clients, right? Because I operate in a B2B environment, pretty much B2B2C environment. So start thinking proactively already. So what if we start pulling back, not my company, but other business partners? What does it mean for the industry? What does it mean for consumers? What's the consumer perspective of that, right? So that's how you start thinking about something and predict what else. Or Diminius, right? My economics team, because I'm a part of the economics team, they already published a report on that. They already start thinking with the tariff situation, what might happen. So again, to answer your question, that's how probably I'm getting there. But again, I'm not perfect. I don't know all the answers, but also I'm learning from my peers. I'm learning from the industry. I'm learning from you guys, right? So what other companies are doing, going to major events. I'm lucky to present at many conferences. And as well, of course, I'm on the board of advisors for the marketing research event conference, one of the largest events in our industry in the United States. And you always kind of like a sponge, getting all that information and absorb. So I probably gave you a very long answer. I don't want to ramble, but it's a big, big question, and we can probably talk for hours, right? So, and I'm sure you guys have a lots of stories to share as well. So, if I would be asking you that question, so
I really love that answer because I think it's one of those to talk about curiosity has been this real touchstone in so many of the interviews that we do with people who are really change agents within their companies. It always starts with that sort of kernel of curiosity. That said, I have never heard anybody use that neck head analogy, and I will not be able to stop thinking about it. I love it. I think that's so smart. So thanks for that.
thank you.
Yeah, Michael, a really fascinating career arc. I want to circle back to something you said. You were talking about speaking at conferences. And in fact, I'm really looking forward to attending your sessions at TMRE next month. I know you're planning to talk about AI and market research. So I thought maybe we could start there. As agentic AI gains traction through the industry, how do you see market researchers leveraging AI, not just as a tool, but really as an agent that's informing strategy, decision making, anticipating consumer needs without compromising human judgment or ethical considerations?
Oh, absolutely. So top benefit, I'm going to start from kind of in reverse because you touched on a very important point, ethical and privacy. But the top benefit probably for us in terms of the research, real-time insights. So because once the technology is there, once consumers build the trust, and once we put all the policy protections in terms of the privacy and do it in an ethical way and not in a creepy way, and consumers feel that they get the benefit. We will be able to get that data in real time as consumers browsing or asking technology to act on their behalf and select product and services. It might affect probably the most impact probably going to be on the marketing industry, search engine optimizations and search engine marketings and stuff, because in a sense, it's going to be technology marketing to technology, but to the technology which knows us as consumers, right? So that's the main aspect, real-time insights. Not like we're going to do this survey, we're going to conduct this campaign and measure. We will be able to adjust our research like pretty much on a daily basis or what we're learning because we're going to get much fuller picture of consumer path to purchase. That 360, let's put it this way, we're going to understand much better cross-channel preferences, not within, let's say, consumer packaged goods grocery, right? Like Circana Nielsen spins kind of situation, but understanding where consumers staying, where they're flying, what airlines they're using, right? What they're reading and stuff like that. So an agentic AI with consumer permission will give us fuller picture because consumers will need to also, in a sense, adapt in terms of they need to build the trust, right, with the generative AI. And once they do that, us as the researchers, we might ask for permission to use some of their information. Again, not maybe per se, because there are, to me, different types of PII. Some companies consider PII as everything, right? But for me, demographic attributes, for example, when it's indicated form, it's not really PII, personal identifiable information, because if I'm a male between this age group and with such and such income, you're not gonna find me that, needle in a haystack. Exactly. It's like not my email, it's not my social security, it's not my phone number, it's not my address, right? So, but some companies feel that it's much stricter. But in a way, anyway, so that's number one. Number two, in terms of building that profiles, dynamic profiles and data sets, right? So because once consumers say, do it for this type of personalization for me, then we can actually specifically be very tailored for that. If a consumer say, you know what, and it's already true, a recent survey, I don't remember who was doing that, consumer saying that 46% of consumers in the US saying, I trust agentic AI to provide the advice on fashion lifestyle if I'm shopping for clothing. And the reason why, because it's an unbiased opinion. If I'm your friend, Glenn, and you're saying, oh, what do you think about this shirt? So I'm like buying, and I'm like, even if I feel that maybe it's not so good, I might scale back my response saying, yeah, maybe it's good, because it's our personal relationship and I don't want to, you take it the wrong way. But AI might say, Glenn, this is awful. Don't buy this color. Don't buy this style, right? And consumers feel that actually when they deal with this technology, it's much more unbiased reply or unbiased advice.
It's so fascinating because, I mean, if you think of the evolution, right, we went from sort of brochureware and companies providing the feedback, and then social media became the more trusted source. And now you're saying that AI is really the next step in that evolvement and is going to deliver even more trust during the consumer journey. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing where we need to differentiate, for example, some simpler, I would say, tasks like acquiring products and services. Definitely, consumers probably going to rely more on the technology. When it comes to emotional part, consumers still going to have that human presence to say, "This is mine." So you handle this part of the journey or shopper journey. If it's something more emotionally, I will actually decide on my own as a human being, right? And that human interaction still is important for consumers, right? It's going to be a mix of that journey. So that's why I think, again, to answer your question about generative AI, we're going to become much more efficient, delivering in real time, have a bigger seat at the table, influencing marketing and product and brand and strategy. But same time, we're going to still have some base of us being core researchers, because when it comes to emotional, when it comes to, let's put this deep dive, right, with emotional, we're going to have that presence of IDIs, for example, in-depth interviews or focus groups or something. We're still going to do research. We're still going to have a human conversation with our consumers or clients. So it's going to be hybrid. Well, that's how I see our future, and will allow us to do much more digital stuff. But again, once it's offline, it's going to be more with that emotional and human being connection.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The thing I love about market research is that, especially in the digital world, is that we have so much of the what already, right? All this indicated data, all the clickstream data tells us what's happening. I love that market research addresses the why it's happening. And it sounds like what you're explaining is that agentic AI and generative AI in general is going to really advance that and really do more of answering the why in real time. So that's really amazing. Thank you.
I think you also brought up something that I don't think we talk about enough, which is that, there's the consumer kind of hesitancy around AI and companies using their data. But when you can tie it to these very specific benefits like personalization, unbiased personalization, there starts to be a real benefit for them. And so the idea of sharing information to get a better experience is far more attractive than we're using this for efficiency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because right now, for example, another data point, same similar to that, and I think Statista just published 46% of consumers do not want their info shared with any type of AI. And the reason why? Because we're still in a, I would say, early majority, because through my quarterly consumer survey, which replicates the Census Bureau survey and it predates me. We have like a 12, 13 years old study, tracking study. I measured how adoption of generative AI. I started doing that 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half when we started getting into that. And now my latest July survey was indicating that over 30% of US consumers using it on a daily basis. But Statista just published a study that 46% of consumers do not want to share that information. Why? Because they still don't trust the technology, whether it's a hallucination or afraid of being breached for data. So it's going to take time and adoption for consumers to actually start trusting the technology. Same time, there's another data point that about 50 to 60% of US consumers already saying, I use one way or the other generative AI, let's put it this way, not as specifically agentic, but generative AI to shop, right? Doing reviews, pricing, comparison, right? There are some providers already which already connected to the internet in a sense to give you the real life search results with all the analytics and all the summaries. So we already see those two trends. We need to understand and separate them, because one is the adoption and another is the issue of trust. So, but again, yes, we already start getting into that area, and agentic AI is the next step of evolution of generative AI for personalization, right? So, to your point, Stephanie, yes.
Let's dig into that trend. I know you've done some work with affluent consumers. They're often thought of as the more digitally connected and the more influential of the different cohorts of consumers. Have you seen their purchase journey expectations change with AI in terms of personalization, convenience, trust, those types of things?
Yes. So if you look at the overall generation, or it would be younger millennials and Gen Z who are much more adept to adopt the technology, say, hey, because the digital, especially Gen Z, digital native, and younger millennials are pretty much up there as well. We see that trend that high network consumers, number one, they pull their weight, they continue spending. because in our internal data, we already see that retail sales, although they're still growing, but they actually being supported by less number of consumers because I helped to launch spending momentum index with my economics team. I have two brilliant economists who actually launched the spending momentum index, and I acted as more of as a product person on this data product, which indicates how consumers spend by several categories spend, like discretionary, non-discretionary, restaurant, gas, and also by geographies. And it's an index. 100 is flat. If it goes above 100, it shows that spending on credit or debit is expanding. If it drops below 100, that means it's contracting. And so by doing that analysis, we were able to see the retail spend versus the spending momentum index by Visa, right? So those are two indicators, and that's what we see. That what it means. It's like in my previous world with Circana IRI, right? Heavy, medium, light buyers. So when light and medium buyers leave your category, then your average ring at the checkout or transaction goes up. Why? Because you stay with the heavy buyers who actually buy from your category, buy your products more, right? That means your average transaction goes up. Same idea here. What we see that low income and mid income consumers already pulling back in terms of their spending, but high net worth or high income consumers, they continue to spend. That's number one, Glenn, to your point. Number two, it's still very similar to rest of the consumers. They still looking for convenience, security, efficiency, right? So, but same time, they continue to spend because they can afford to spend, because it's important for them to focus on what is important to them. And with this particular case, yes, they're much more prone to use the technology because affluent consumers, they're much more familiar with the technology, more accustomed to utilize the technology. They much more often would be early adopters of the technology, like we know from Crossing Chasm, right? So from our business school programs and stuff that, early adopters and moving to innovators, early adopters, and early majority. And so that's where bulk of the high income consumers sitting. But same time, they're much more, I would say, fluent in terms of their decision making process, because when we're comparing them to the rest of the population, a little bit easier for them to make that purchase decision, right? Because I guess they're not so being challenged by the price situation, right? There's a little bit more fluency there, right? Okay, I'll buy that because I can afford it. It's not like huge deal. I'm not losing the when I'm not investing too much into this product, right? Because it's not much less share of my income. Let's put this way, that affluency influencing that decision making process, which takes a little bit less time in comparison to the rest of the consumers. And so technology comes in actually as a tool which they perceive to help them to make that decision even faster, because they much busier, I guess, in their lives. They're running families, businesses, they're traveling. So, and that's where the technology comes in and say, hey, I'm going to help you to organize your day. I'm going to help you to make those decisions much faster so you can focus on what is important to you. So, and that's where I see that bifurcation between the rest of the us consumers and high net worth or affluent consumers.
Thank you. Great.
To kind of turn to some of your other recent work that I think Glenn and I are both pretty fascinated by, touching on the gig economy and its evolving workforce. It sounds like from what I read, and then I listened to your Waves of Thinking interview that you did at Quirks, that surprise, gig workers are not a monolithic group with a common set of motivators and preferences. I would love if you could talk a little bit about what nuanced patterns that you have observed in that population. And in particular, what are the implications for financial providers and other brands that are engaging with different segments within the gig working population?
Absolutely, yes. One of the interesting facts that some of the gig workers, yes, there is a money aspect of it, right? Especially side hustle. Those are actually who doing it because they want an extra income. But key component that majority of them doing it out of either passion or flexibility because they want to do what they want to do, not to have a 9 to 5 job and having a boss, following their passion. And that's the primary motivator. But also interesting that, yes, definitely side hustle. And side hustle, how we define that, when you have a primary income, whether you're working full-time or part-time for somebody, or you're doing it like gig economy full-time, but you're also doing the side hustle. That's where we see that people say, yes, I'm doing it because I need extra income. That's number one. So we need to differentiate that. So for many people, gig is more expression of themselves. Second one, actually, younger consumers, of course, driving that, right? So that means millennials, Gen Zs, right? So for financial institutions, to your point, or implications, it's more focused on planning their future and what they want to achieve. And the third one, gig economy allows people being more like a digital nomads, unless you know, like delivery services, right? So much more flexibility in terms of the locations, places they work from, because some of them can travel. Let's say if you're a computer programmer or doing something via a digital platform, right? So access to that. And I would say the number 4 point, actually, if you look at how they get involved in the digital economy, very often the bias is that it's a Uber driver, right? It's a Fiverr client, but actually it's not the case. 60% of them doing it directly, almost 60% in the United States. So yeah, and they're not using the platform. You tutoring, let's say, language, or you have your own website. So you don't have to, like, people think that actually it's going to be a digital platform. It's not the case. About 20% utilize the Uber or Fiverr or TaskRabbit or any other platform. And another interesting fact, because I consider those also as a gig economy, and I have a friend like that who is the excellent IT architect, but he prefers 1099 as an independent contractor. He might work for one big company. I'm sure you know those names for 6 months or a year. Then he moves and works for somebody else, and he looks always for that hourly rate, very well paid, because he says, I'd rather buy my own insurance and taxes, but I want to achieve as much as possible. But at the same time, I want to have that flexibility. I want to have pretty much that opportunity to follow what I want to do with my career. So it's another about 19, 20% of gig workers who are actually doing the 1099, one employer at a time, right? So not having a multiple ones. That's what we need to consider as well. And we consider those gig workers too. So
Do you consider, like, I've noticed that there's a lot of, over the past few years, a lot of fractional folks, and these are tend to be higher up in corporations, but fractional CMOs. I'll give you an example. Does that get bucketed into the world of gig, or is that different?
no, you're absolutely right. So definitely, and those actually again could be independent 1099 contractors, because let's say you're smaller business, right? You cannot afford the full-time CMO, and that's where the fractional comes in. Either the contract or working 10 or 20 hours for that business and helping them to get off the ground, and then moving on to the next one, or maybe in the future come back and doing more work for them. Definitely, that's what I call pretty much 1099 in a sense, because they can sign a contract and so many hours. Yes, that's a very good example, Stephanie. Thank you for asking.
Well, it makes you realize how just truly big the gig economy is becoming. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why, again, back to your original question, companies need to tailor products and services based on those needs. And it's not only generational, but it's also based on what they were trying to achieve in terms of their lives and careers, because they value independence, they value experiences, by the way. So, like affluent consumers, actually, circling back to Glenn's question, that they're looking for those memorable experiences, personalized experiences. So that's where there is actually overlap a little bit and similarity between two segments, I would say. So because that independence is very important to all of them.
It's the live to work crowd versus the work to live crowd.
That is correct. Like Europeans, right? Just kidding. Versus us in America, right? So they always keep telling us, right? So yes.
I wanted to go back to something you were talking about a little bit earlier, which is we were talking about the difference between the high affluent folks and those who are not in that category, and some of their concerns and anxieties. And I wanted to focus on them for this question. We definitely know, I think, that consumer concerns more broadly are shifting rapidly in the current landscape of, economic uncertainty, political uncertainty, technological uncertainty, right? It's like hitting us from all sides. Are there particular consumer anxieties, privacy, job security, anything like that, that you see as having the most impact on consumer confidence, spending behavior, and even things like brand loyalty? And what I'm really trying to get to is what can brands do to assuage, alleviate, address those kinds of concerns head on?
It's a very good question, Stephanie. Number one, we need to acknowledge that in the last 5 to 6 years, the concerns are shifting from shorter term to longer term. Why? We lived through a COVID situation. Hopefully, COVID is kind of behind us, although sometimes I hear about the vaccination still and some people still affected. But in a sense, I remember back in 2020, 2021, the concern was how can I survive now? How can I kind of keep my family safe and live through these tumultuous times? And now with geopolitical events, inflation, although we kind of inflation subsided, but tariff situation, the concern is shifting to longer term concern. Will I be able to buy a house as a young family? Will I be able to raise a child? Will I be able to get my education and achieve longer term career goals? And that's what we see right now, that those concerns are shifting. And to your point, what brands can do, companies can do, whether it's a financial or any others, start building that trust in terms of helping consumers to realize that we as brands are here when they stand your situation and we're here to support you, whether it's a flexible return policy or helping them with access to additional capital, although our rates are still high, let's say with the mortgages, right? So having a special programs, like for example, some builders, when it comes to new housing situation, sometimes have extra discounts, give you extra closing cash. If you finance with us, we give you some discounted points to lower your interest rate, for example, right? So education, again, that messaging, right, of trust, of being present, of walking their talks is a very important factor. And helping consumers to say that, yes, we're going to help you to realize your dreams because we thought about it, right? We're creating products or services which help you to achieve that. And that's very important thing to understand. Again, shorter term concerns shifting to longer term concerns. How I'm going to live through this situation and not just living through the situation, how I can achieve my goals. And I was presenting to one of the conferences and we put that deck together on that shift back in the spring. And nowadays, to achieve the American dream, you need almost $5 million to do that, right? Because it's so expensive buying a house, raising a kids, going to college, buying a car. So, and that's what it is because sometimes brands don't realize that consumers being very much stressed. Is their American dream? Was it ever that dream achievable? So, and we see that more and more negative trend among consumers that they thinking more and more negative towards or about achieving American dream.
Michael, one of the superpowers you bring to research is how you bring together different data streams. I've heard you talk about this a couple of times when we spoke directly on other podcasts. You bring together traditional and behavioral economic data, quant and qualitative research signals, social sentiment, AI-driven predictive analytics to build this holistic view of consumers. Can you share a little bit about your process and how you go about doing it?
Well, absolutely. And again, back to that original question, Stephanie asked me, how did you get here? I got lucky, guys, because I work in marketing, then marketing research, more traditional. But I also had, Glenn, you were part of that conversation when you, me, and the founder of your company we had a conversation because I was hired by Circana and been trained and been lucky to manage that platform. I got access to syndicated data and understanding transactional data. And very often, my colleagues would stay either in one area or the other. I was lucky enough to cross that bridge in terms of working in on both sides of the equation, right? So that's why I feel that kind of a that I'm lucky with understanding, and reason why I'm kind of setting the stage here for you. So because definitely the traditional insights or research is very, very important, whether it's a quant, qual, social listening. But once you learn about the transactional area, because it gives you so much information about consumer behavior. And the way how I see it, it needs to be kind of a synergy or total equation of everything: a regular research, syndicated research, other sources of research, transactional and piano research. Nowadays, it's all expanded. It needs to be all come together to really create that 360. And by the way, again, agentic AI will help us to cross that chasm, I would say, to cover that bridge. That's what I'm excited about, because it's not going to be just, yes, we're going to do the brand tracking, but then we separately looking at the transactional data. If you're working with CPG companies, say, hey, we did this, right? This campaign, did they have a lift on our sales, right? So yeah, I guess, yeah, we can build a lookalike. But when we're going to have deterministic data, right? So, like, for example, my spending momentum index, it's a deterministic data. It's not lookalike, it's not modeled. It's really based on our transactional data, what we call VisaNet data, right? So, and that's how it's done. And that's what we need to do. And that's what I'm excited about when you say how you do it. So, you look at the insights portion and say, what do I know currently, right, about my consumer, about my clients? Then what is missing? Can we enrich that data with transactional data, with demographic data, right, with the social graphic data, like some profiles? Again, we know, like, I don't want to advertise, but Mosaic or Personix data, right, the lifestyles or some other data, right? So that's how you start bringing this whole thing together, right? So if consumers opt into saying, uh, track my purchases, then in return, get me that personalization done, which actually my company is already doing, right? So consumers can opt in with certain retailers, right? What they call merchants. So again, bringing that data, all that data together, in creating that mix. And again, because I've been exposed to that side of our industry, so that's how I always practically think. I have a qual, I have a quant, I have some other sources. What about transactional? What about the panel? What about the demographics data and any other data in between, right? So can I build that whole equation, right, with all that data and make it more deterministic versus model data? So that's kind of a very simplified answer to a very complicated question. I'll be honest with you, because what you ask is much, much bigger. That's a great, 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 great question, actually, right? So, but, and again, we can talk much more in depth about that, but it's a, yeah, I feel like I'm giving you very simplified answer, not going into depth of that, but yeah.
I think it's a really good answer, and it creates, like every good answer, it creates more questions. I'm curious how you're leveraging AI specifically to make that exercise easier or more valuable, improve the signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, that's a great question. For now, especially in our case, there's a big push to adopt the generative AI tools at work, right? So, and definitely you can actually bring different data sets to really analyze and look for those trends. And there are already opportunities to do that internally. But I think, although some tools are already there to enable agentic AI, for example, to your point, but the precedent, the cases still needs to be developed. And the reason why, I'll be honest with you, because it's an ecosystem, right? Think of it this way. I work for the company which represents the true network. We don't sell anything direct to consumer, right? In a sense, we support consumers, definitely. But what it creates the ecosystem where you have a merchant, you have a issuer, you have a processor, and you have a network. And all of those players needs to adapt and enable the technology to be able to really start building that equation of building that kind of a customer 360, right? So I think we're not there yet, but it's coming. Once ecosystem is being enabled, true ecosystem, then us as researchers, we will be able to come in and support that, because we will be able to connect the dots. Right now, you kind of bring separate data sets and try to use the technology to kind of connect that as a lookalike, sometimes indirectly. So, but already there is some progress there. So, but we need to take that beyond and make it more efficient and real-time insights. That's what we talked about earlier.
I think too, something that it just kind of harkens back to, at the beginning of the conversation, we were like, how did you get here doing all of these various things? But you're kind of bringing up something that I think is going to need to change for a lot of insights professionals, which is that a lot of us think of ourselves as like primary researchers or people who work with syndicated transactional data. And I can tell you, I've said a handful of times in my career, I don't work with that kind of data. I don't work with transactional data. I do data modeling, but I mean, I need to work with a contained data set, And I think that the more tools we have, especially in the generative AI world, the more it breaks down those walls for us and allows people like me to be able to say, no, I can work with lots of different kinds of data. I didn't do it the way that Michael did through natural curiosity, but have been facilitated, right? Like this time of facilitation is coming where and along with that, the expectation that we need to be able to work with all of these kinds of data to build a holistic picture.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But again, it's and nowadays it's much more democratized. When I was at IRI, it was a duopoly industry in a sense, right? Two and a half companies, three and a half companies total, probably in the industry which had access to syndicated data and consumer panel, or worldwide, I would say, right? Nowadays, you have more players. Again, we're not going to promote those names who use the receipt data, right? So scan data where they have some SKU level data. But again, it's very niche focused. It's a grocery, it's apparel, but we want to go beyond and above that, right? So high involvement versus small involvement, right? So durable goods and stuff like that. We want to get that information to it. That manufacturers want to learn about that. We want to have more understanding of airline industries or hospitality industries and everything in between. And I see slowly but surely there are more providers which start covering those areas. That's why you can start bringing all of those data sets together. So, and our industry is evolving. And to your point, Stephanie, like right now, there is a conversation. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be a generative AI prompt engineer. That means asking right questions. So, but I think it needs to be much more comprehensive. To your point, right? So we need to expand our skill sets and understanding the new technology, but not just saying I only know this or I know only that. Like for example, and definitely there is a space for excellent facilitators, and I worked with some of those even as a contractor during my time at Schwab or at other companies, right? So people who really just conduct in-depth interviews, right? And you need to be very good facilitator, definitely, or focus groups, especially even more control and avoid advice. But same time, for regular researchers, we need to cover all of those areas. Start learning about if you are missing that piece of syndicated data, right? Start understanding better the syndicated data. Maybe you're not going to be an expert which going to run some leakage tree analysis from consumer panel or category analysis on the point of sale side, but really understanding how that data works, what major attributes, how I can actually get it all together with the primary research versus secondary research versus third-party data, because we need to be well-rounded experts, because we being perceived more and more as internal consultants, again, that neck to our organizations to help them navigate, right? So, and I bet within your organization, probably there are some people who consult on product and services or whatever, not only those who client-facing people, right, but internal people saying, where are we going to take our company next, right? So what's the next phase of our development, right, in terms of the products and services we provide? So those factors we need to keep in mind, and that's the future of the research, that we're going to expand our skill sets and be those internal consultants. Let's put this way. What do you do? I do internal strategy insights consulting for my company. That's how I would answer my question if somebody asked, if somebody asked me that question. So what do you do for your company?
Right. I feel like you're teeing me up for a question in a similar vein. But one of the things that I love about the work that you do is your focus on the future and really developing these data-driven strategies that ensure that Visa is ready to meet the consumer of the future on firm footing. And so with the convergence of all of these things that we were just talking about, I won't go through all of them, but we've got a lot of things at our fingertips. What advice would you give to leaders to help them kind of foster this culture where teams aren't just analyzing today's state and reporting the news, let's say, but acting as proactive strategists who are anticipating trends before they even emerge in the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, a few points here. Number one, provide for your teams and yourself, be open to innovation, be open to new things. What it means by saying that not only focusing on task at hand, like how we can help our marketing to the bottom line or learn about the consumers. What are the outside my industry trends, right? Learning about that. That's number one. So, what is changing with the consumer mindset, regardless of my product and services, what I represent? Number two, identify skill sets which your team is either low on or lacking, what needs to be added, what skill sets we need to learn or technology to add to be much more efficient, to be much more productive. And number three, provide opportunities for people to work together as a cohesive team. What I mean by that, when you have multiple departments working in silos, especially with larger corporations, as you know, right? When business is small business, it's much easier to communicate. But with a larger business, a larger structure, sometimes you might have several departments working on a similar initiatives. Have that synergy, communication, line of communication open. Have a maybe like a intranet site or some kind of a hub where people can exchange ideas, express those ideas, share the projects you're working on. So not having those silos, right? So that's the third component. I think coming with that, again, outside your industry trends, skill sets I need to be successful, and also open up for those silos, right? So information flow, I think it creates that competitive advantage for any insights department to really build those relationships with your business partners. Because again, we're there to support our business partners. We're not sellers in a sense, although we enable sales, we enable marketing, but building those relationships are very, very important. So not being order takers, being again strategic consultants, subject matter experts, not saying, okay, you came to me and say, I want to achieve this. Michael, I want you to conduct this research. I need this type of a consumers. I want a survey or whatever that is. No, what are you trying to do, guys? Or how I can help you, but I need to understand how to be most efficient. Maybe we're lacking a supplier who has that capability. Maybe we're lacking some skill sets. Then I'm going to train my team. Maybe I need to acquire this platform and technology like yours, right? To do that DIY research because you have access to certain panels. You can provide me with efficient way to save my budgets because this year there is a challenge. Many other factors. I'm just kind of giving you an example, right? So that's where the competitive advantage comes in.
Yeah, that is incredibly practical advice, I feel like, that you just gave. But yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
On keeping on the theme of practical advice, one of the things our podcast listeners are always eager to hear are like real world applications they can take back to their own work. You've just given us some great ones. Maybe from your perspective, you can share what you think are the most promising or even surprising applications for agentic AI in market research, whether that's something that's already having measurable impact today or something that you see untapped potential that's coming like just around the bend.
Oh, you got me. That's a very, very good question. Again, because we're talking about a nascent technology, right? So I think hyper-personalization, and I explain because consumers, especially affluent consumers, expecting more and more of that hyper-personalized experiences when they deal with us as brands. And agentic AI, I mentioned that we call it tokenization token when consumers say, not from the security perspective, because there is a tokenization for each of your transaction, which replaces your actual PAN number, personal account number, the 16 digits number, whether it's a debit or credit card. But tokenization when consumers proactively opting in, saying, track my history, but in return, I want you very hyper personalized experiences specifically for me, whether it's a product recommendations or services or exclusive opportunities like in the loyalty programs to buy 2 tickets to a Taylor Swift concert, for example, which is not easily attainable, right? So, and that's where agentic AI can easily comes in because you can turn on, in a sense, consumer gives you a opt-in permission, and then you start feeding those recommendations very easily and efficiently based on technology capabilities and consumer history. But also you can start feeding some primary research as well. If you know this is the type of a consumer in terms of the age, demographics, whatever, so you can actually predict their tastes because consumers want technology, not in a creepy way, but make some predictive decisions. Say, hey, did you think of, have you thought about this, right? So, oh, yeah, actually, that product would be perfect for me. I'd never thought about it, right? So, and this is the right price. So that's where we start moving. And I think that's the practical application that starts seeing already with the opt-in transactional history programs, what we already have right now.
Interesting. Hyper-personalization is definitely something everyone can be thinking about today. One last question for me. Looking at the broader implications for AI, how do you see it reshaping the relationship between brands and consumers, especially in the high value segments? We talked about hyper localization. Do you see personalization? Do you see any other places where brands and consumers are going to evolve due to AI?
I think services, right? So, but I think again, if you're asking me from the service perspective in general, right, we're gonna see more of a automation even in the physical world. I was at another conference in LA, and I saw this little cart on wheels calling person's name in a certain area and delivering food. Actually, right? It's like a lockbox. Yes, I have a video I could show. So where it has like a lockbox and it says Michael, like Michael Nevski. And then I come in and I punch the code they gave me and I open the box and the lunch is delivered. So I pull it out and close the lid and walk away. So already in LA, on the streets of LA. And some people even treat that as a pet, start kind of petting that box on wheels. So yes, on wheels. It's very interesting experience. We're probably gonna see more of that in services where more services like that will be provided. We already see some of the trash or tray dirty dishes collection like at the United Club lounges. You probably seen those moving around, right? So, and I think we're getting that area of robotization and generative AI or agentic AI where offline world is gonna kind of fuse together online and offline world. So, but it's we still far away from there, but I think that's another application. So what I can see is coming our way.
Yeah, that's a great example. I wonder how far away it is. It depends on what you read, but it does feel like, you know, agentic AI and generative AI is going to be the thing that untethers the robots and really lets them act a little more autonomously and more independently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Michael, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I had a feeling it would be, and it definitely exceeded my expectations. So thank you so much for joining us. To close us out, there's a question we just always like to ask our guests on behalf of the folks who are coming into the industry. What is one piece of advice that you would offer to someone who's just starting out, whether that's in the world of insights or economic analysis or strategy, just sort of across the areas you work?
Yeah, thank you. Besides what I already said about natural curiosity and going beyond and above, kind of in terms of learning and supporting people and building a relationship, have a good mentor. I got lucky in my career, whether it's Ira, Bob Tomei, who was leading our product practice as the AVP, or former CMO of Visa, Lynn Bigger, who mentored me through National Advertising Week mentorship program, introduced me to Visa. Have a good mentor who help you to develop the skill sets, to understand the business, to learning how you can progress, not in terms of the only regular hardcore skills, but your soft skills, right? So being as a professional, as an executive, learning those are also very important. And again, having maybe not in the one or two or three mentors, or I would say people who can support you is very, very important. And I always strive to have people from different functions, different areas of life and careers and corporate world because I love to learn and it's very, very important to me. So to continue that development. So
That's such a great message, especially in market research, because so many market researchers can be introverted and maybe a little less comfortable with actively seeking out mentors and developing that relationship. So to hear that from someone who spent a career in market research, it's really it's really valuable advice. Thanks for sharing that.
thank you so much.
One of the biggest topics in AI related to market research today is synthetic data. I'm curious if that's anything you've thought about, you've looked at, or have any hot takes for us.
So I think couple aspects. I see some of the providers, or some of the players in our industry start doing mix of syndicated or synthetic data versus actual real person data, and creating this symbiosis together to have that more reliability, right? And I think that's important aspect. Again, like with regular consumers, us as researchers, we need to make sure that synthetic data is a reliable source of information. Yes, once again, we build that trust and it's there. Definitely more researchers like me going to say, yes, I'm going to rely on synthetic because I can run it in 99% or alpha 0.05 confidential interval with 5%, 95% confidence. We can say that the results of the synthetic study will replicate actual physical study with real human beings. Then it would be much less expensive. Then it will be much more efficient. And as far classes, researchers will adapt to that. But before we get there, we need to have more proof, and proof is in the eating and using it, right? So we need to have more proof on synthetic data that it's not a black box, not like, trust me, it's going to work. So us as researchers, we want to really understand the details, semantics, dive into that. And once again, we have that proof, we say, okay, maybe at the beginning it would be a little bit more expensive for research companies because you would probably provide a real life study versus synthetic data. You say, hey, we did that independently and look, the results are very similar. And we need to do several times to really prove that. Then again, us as human beings say, oh, okay, I can trust that technology. I can trust what you guys doing, right? So that's what it is. Not just saying this is a shiny tool. We use the synthetic data because generative AI, we can now create that. But how reliable is it, right? Adoption period.
I think a lot of us on the supplier side are going to have, a new business line in synthetic data side by sides for a long time until it's, really replacing human panel. Great. Wonderful. Thank you for that, Mike. I appreciate the answer and I appreciate the freewheeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Michael, thanks again for joining us on the Curiosity Current. It's been great to get to hear from you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor, and I truly enjoyed our conversation. You guys very good at asking tough questions, but those are great questions. So thank you so much.
See you at TMRE in Las Vegas.
Yes, hopefully I will see you guys at the TMR in Las Vegas and many other places. Looking forward to continue our partnership. Thank you.
Sounds good. Bye, Michael.
Bye-bye.
The Curiosity Current is brought to you by AYTM. To find out how AYTM helps brands connect with consumers and bring insights to life, visit AYTM.com. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the Curiosity Current on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.